Hello, everyone.
Hi there.
Hi.
Good to be back
Yeah.
and ready for another podcast.
Here we go.
So this one is a little bit different in nature. It's partly personal for me, but at the same time, I think it's got a huge level of application all across our organization and all across many organizations.
Yes.
One of the things that we face as an organization is brain drain. As people get older, retire, and leave the organization, and they've got a whole bunch of materials and documents and things that they've produced over the course of their time,
Hmm.
and you don't know what to do with all of these. Now,
Yeah.
Matthew, you served in Cameroon.
Hmm.
I'm sure you've got stashes of files around the office there from different people, don't you?
Yeah, definitely. There's stashes of stuff. There's stuff that lives in Dropbox. There's stuff that lives in the SIL archives, and it's sort of all over the place. Although I don't typically I have one here, but typically I have a hard time finding a pen because I don't actually work on paper that often.
Uh-huh.
Sometimes I'm like, where I had a pen in here last week, but yeah, there are definitely things that pile up digitally or on paper that are coming around, and yeah, we just have this problem that um, often when you need something, it's like, yeah, you need to go talk to this person, and they have it, and once that person retires, then oh, where do I get that thing that was important that we used 3 years ago?
Right.
Um, yeah, I mean, we're supposed to be archiving things that are publishable and things that are in process, but it doesn't happen as often as it should.
So, and the problem is not just limited to documents, printed documents.
Yeah.
It's also limited to things that are stuck in old file formats that
Mhm.
nobody knows how to open or read anymore.
Yeah.
So, let me just explain my situation and what led me down this path.
Mhm.
So, for a long time, we've had a whole bunch of WordPerfect documents on my hard drive that we've actually been pushing from computer to computer. So every time I get a new computer, that
Mhm.
folder with all these documents gets
Yep.
moved over. And they date back to like the early 90s
Mhm.
and a lot of the 90s.
Believe it or
And
not, I
so,
have WordPerfect documents too.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, one thing that's really crazy about WordPerfect documents is they didn't enforce file extensions back then in the early version. So you could name them anything you want.
Well, as long as it was 8 characters,
Yeah, eight
8.3.
character dot three letter extension.
Yep.
So the names didn't even tell what kind of file it was.
Mhm.
So what started it was working with Claude a lot. I just realized one day, I'm like, you know what? I've been trying to convert these files and I've been doing them one at a time. I find like a website that does conversion of the old
Yeah.
file format, and I'll like upload them one at a time. It'll do the conversion. And so I've got like a folder half full of all these conversions, but I've never finished them.
Mhm.
So it just occurred to me, I'm like, I'll bet Claude could do this like in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
And I built a process where I started with those and I just asked it to do a conversion. And the first thing it did, because everything you do with Claude is interactive, right? You
Mhm.
shouldn't be saying, do this. You should present it a problem and
Yep.
say, help me with the solution.
Much better.
So the first thing it said is, well, actually, it's quite easy. All you have to do is download, I think it was LibreOffice, which has
Mhm.
a built-in converter. And I didn't even touch the computer. It downloaded that in the background
Yep.
and ran a conversion script all behind the scenes. So I never even touched LibreOffice.
Mhm.
And so it did a process where it searched my folders for the WordPerfect
Mhm.
documents. It found them all. and it converted them. And then I was like, okay, but this is only part of the problem, because I realized the second part was we've got all handwritten letters like this that were, some are in cursive, some are in neatly printed writing for my wife.
Sometimes you're using whiteout on a pink page, apparently.
And we've got this box full of all of these letters that were preserved by her mom.
Mm-hmm.
And we have all of these letters now. And so I was thinking, like, what do you do with these, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so I started in my question with Claude and I said, what kind of, because I thought it was going to be expensive to do. And so I said, what kind of an LLM on Hugging Face would I use for character recognition, like for handwriting and OCR?
Yep.
And it actually told me, it listed some of the top ones. And then it said, but really, the best results are going to come just from giving it as a file to me, to Claude.
Yeah.
Because Claude has such good recognition abilities, because that's one of the main ways it gets its input is through interpreting images.
Yeah, stepping aside from that, you and so many times if I'm doing debugging, I literally just paste a screenshot and say this, like, and you can give it video. Like there are actually people will go and record a little screencast of the bug, and then they'll give that to Claude and say, "Hey, fix this," and it can go and figure out what's going on and scan it. Yeah, Claude doesn't produce video or text directly, but it's really good at using them as inputs.
Right. So I was surprised because, it's one thing to do OCR. If you think about OCR in the typical fashion, it's looking
OCR
for,
is optical character recognition. It's when you take an image of text and you turn it into an editable document.
right. And so the OCR, it's looking for like lines of text on a, like typed text on a page.
Yeah.
Well, imagine, what do you do when you have text that has writing in the margins, like handwriting on top of a printed letter?
Yeah.
And that's what this box is full of. There's a lot of typed letters. A lot of them have writing in the sides or sign off at the bottom with a PS. And so Claude handled all of that beautifully. What I asked for markdown files to be produced. And so it produced it all in markdown files, and where there was like a handwritten note, it also included that in the markdown. Now, markdown is just a very simple format of text. We use hashtags for titles, and like asterisks for bolded words and things like that. So it'll be readable years from now. It's just plain text.
Sort of the same way that we have SFM, which is we use those slashes, and those files, again, like the people that do archiving had decided that Unicode text files, which is what we're using, are going to be readable as long as we have computers. Yep.
So anyway, I was working, I used the system that we've talked about in previous podcasts with VS Code as the interface, and Claude running in VS Code, and then hooked up to GitHub, because when I get these, I want to, preserve them and store them in GitHub. Plus the fact that my wife and I are both working on this repository of all these files, and we can sync, and she can work on her end and I can work on mine.
Okay.
So with all of that,
subscriptions.
One of the hardest well, let me just explain the process. So we first gathered all the files and identified them. Claude learned that it couldn't trust the file names, so it would scan the first few bytes of each file to detect its true format, and then it would convert it by type. We had digital files, emails, web pages, because it scanned my website. and then the handwritten and scanned paper. And that's where AI shines.
Yeah.
Even old cursive and faded printouts, which defeat traditional OCR, Claude reads the images directly and transcribes them the same way a person would squint at grandma's handwriting. So the hardest problem that faces us is dating all of these files, because it's very important to establish a timeline if we want to come up with a complete overview of our life in Africa.
Yeah.
Then dating is very important. So that was where Claude also shined. What it did is it would try to figure out the date a number of ways. It would look for an email header or a date written on the letter itself. Sometimes it would look at the last modified date, but then, of course, there was a single 2017 backup date was stamped onto dozens of unrelated files.
Yep.
So it discounted those.
It's probably
And
some January 1970s in there as well that
yeah.
Came from bad file names.
And so then there are context clues. It was actually able to put a date range after it determined, okay, your oldest son was born at this date, and then this son. And so it could tell based on the content of the letters, a date range. And then it enabled us to actually, it created a CSV file.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was a column in that CSV file where I would say, yes, actually looking at this, I agree to that date, or no, here's a more accurate date. And so going through those dates was kind of the last thing that we had to do.
That's impressive. So that's
and then at the end,
like forensic almost, like let's figure this out. Yeah. Okay.
So, and then at the end, when we had all the dates established, it went through and it named them with the 4-digit year, month, and day. And so now every single letter, every single email, letter, newsletter, whatever we have is all chronologically ordered in a single directory. And I can't wait to see what we can do with that. The first thing I did is I made a timeline. And it mapped out a whole timeline. And it wasn't publishable yet because there's certain important dates were missing. Because looking at that timeline, we realized there were ranges of dates that were missing in the archive. So now we need to do some work to see if we can dig up some of the missing areas.
Okay.
Now, there's two things I want to end with this. Is first, I want to talk about how this is relevant for our viewers. Okay. And
then how do you get there?
Yeah. So that's the second part, is how do you get there? So the first part, the relevance. So I started with these letters, but I've got another cardboard box in my basement that is full of language data in Fulfulde that was handwritten in little notebooks. I had asked for example sentences for the dictionary, and somebody wrote up a whole bunch of example sentences for all different words, and I've got a stack of these notebooks that have all of that in it, and it's never been digitized. And now it'll be interesting to see how Claude handles these special characters in Fulfulde. But that's another project that we can do.
Yeah, that can be a challenge because the technology that does OCR, it works best when it knows the language. If it sees a badly printed TNE, it's going to be like, that's probably an H, and it will autocorrect it. If it doesn't know the language, if it can't identify the language, very often it will correct things the wrong direction. Yeah, you have an advantage when you're working in languages that the machine knows, because it can clean up things before you see the errors.
Right. But I'm curious to try Claude on it just to see, because we're talking about the Fulfulde language, which is a little bit more of a major language, and so it may know the characters in that
Macro
language.
language, yeah.
Yeah. So, but anyway, I'm sure lots of departments in SIL and in other organizations have, reams of paper of files that may be of importance.
Mhm.
Um, and so this is one way to get it in. And let me now explain a little bit about the method. Like how did
Okay.
we get here? So you might be thinking like, what's the prompt? Because
Was there a
but
magic prompt? Are there magic
is
words to
there a
make this
magic
happen?
prompt?
Yep.
So the answer is no, there is no magic prompt.
Mhm.
There is like a starter conversation that you have. So you've got basically Claude focused on an empty directory, okay, that you're going to put all these files in, whether it's scans or documents to be converted.
Mhm.
And you're going to start your conversation something like, I've got a large collection of documents that I want to turn into an organized, searchable digital archive.
Mhm.
They're a mix of formats: scanned, handwritten letters, typed documents, old word processor files, and emails scattered across my computer. I don't
Mhm.
want to lose or alter the originals.
Mhm.
Before we write any code, ask me questions about what I have, where it lives, and what I want the end result to be.
Yep.
Then help me set up a repeatable process one step at a time.
Mhm.
I'm not a programmer, so explain things as we go. Now, that's not the prompt that I used, but if you look at it, there's no magic to that prompt. There's no, it's just me explaining the situation to Claude, and then you put it in plan mode, and then Claude will interact with you and come up with a plan on how to proceed. And then, of course, you've got to you've got to check up on it and give it feedback if it does something wrong.
Mhm.
So what you need is VS Code. You could possibly do this in Claude Cowork attached to a directory.
Yep. Definitely.
Um, and a GitHub account to store your data in. I set it to a private directory because these are personal
Mhm.
letters that I was doing. And then once it's going, uh, there were a couple, I had to interact with it on a number of occasions to say, like with the dating of files. I
Mhm.
said, could you make it easy for me? Like, could you make a interface that I could easily like add the dates to rather than try to work with a CSV text file or something?
Yep.
I And it did. It made a simple web interface that I could just add dates to and fix dates. And so we just worked through it until we were done. So I'm excited to present each of my children with kind of an overview of their life in Africa. And
That's
then,
cool.
who knows what else we'll do with the data set when we're done.
Yeah, I've had similar experiences. I used to use an old Google tool called Picasa to manage all my photos, and it had really good tools for looking for duplicates across this and that, and organizing and reorganizing, and you could see everything in screenshots. But it you can still get old versions of it, but it's not something that they maintain anymore, and nobody's really picked up that let's manage a whole bunch of images on your computer. So I have had Claude help me write scripts to look and see, hey, find the cases where I have two versions of the same image and one is lower quality, and let's get rid of the lower quality one.
Mhm.
And or find cases where yeah, these, even though they don't have the same file name, they are the actual same image. And so just scanning over and over again. And I talked to Claude about cleaning up my email archive. I'm a digital pack rat. I want to keep a copy of something for the future. And so I end up with a lot of stuff in my email and wherever. And I said, hey, yeah, I'm really having a hard time cleaning out my email, and because it's hard to figure out, what do I want to keep and what can I let go? And it was like, well,
Mhm.
you know what you really should do is just download your whole email using Google Takeout and then create an archive, something like what you're talking about, a local archive, and that you can sync up to the internet or whatever of the stuff that's important, and then just have it out of your email. I was like,
Mhm.
that makes a lot of sense. Instead of trying to set up an API where I have to go and download 3 emails at a time, fix them, send it back, it just said, just download it all locally, and then you can run it. I mean, I can run it locally on this machine, but that was great. Yeah, AI is great for organizing. I had it organize my downloads folder one time. I just said, hey, just clean this up by category. Don't move these 3 types of files. Leave them where they are. Go.
Right.
So
Right.
that's cool.
Well, the most difficult part of this whole process for me, just so you know, was actually scanning the documents. That was the most time-consuming part.
Yeah.
Everything else, we just, you set it running, and it would, a couple times it actually used up all of my 5-hour credit
Hmm.
in Claude, and then I had to come back and get it going again on the next 5-hour segment.
Yeah.
But that was it. So
Pays to
really
have a
excited
spouse
about it.
who also has a plan.
Yeah. So that's what I wanted to share this week. So thanks a lot for joining us, and I'll try to include a link to a document with more instructions about this project that would help you get going on your own similar project. So
Excellent. Thanks for
thanks for
watching.
joining us.